안녕하세요. 저 미스 지수고요.
Hello, this is Miss Jisu.
제가 오늘 유튜브에서 그 잉크워시로 그림 그리는 거 라이브를 할 거거든요.
Today on YouTube, I'm going to demonstrate how to draw using InkWash via YouTube.
제가 평소에 요런 그림들 있잖아요. 인스타에 또 올리고 유튜브에도 올리던 그림들 이런 거.
So now I have all these drawings that I used to publish on my Instagram.
이런 거.
These kind of drawings.
이런 거. 요거를 제가 그 질문을 되게 많이 받았거든요. 유튜브에 올릴 때마다 어떤 붓을 쓰고 어떤 잉크를 쓰고 어떻게 하느냐 질문 되게 많이 받았는데 그때 답을 할 수가 없었어요.
For this drawing, I have received many questions. When I uploaded this drawing, people asked what kind of brushes I used, what kind of technique I used, what kind of techniques I used to paint this drawing. But I have received a lot of messages and comments regarding these kind of questions, but I couldn't answer to all of you guys.
그래서 오늘 가장 많이 질문을 한 먹은 이거를 쓰고 있습니다.
So you guys have asked a lot of times. The ink I used is this one.
뭐 국산도 쓰고 가끔 썼는데 최근에 산 건 이거거든요. 보통 제 그 구독자분들이 조금 서구권에 계시는 분들이 많아가지고 이거를 구하는 방법이 조금 고민이 될 텐데.
I know that there are lots of viewers who are from the Occidental countries, so I understand that you guys might be wondering where you guys could get this ink.
이거는 그 수미 잉크라고 아마 그 아마존에 검색을 하면 나올 거예요.
This ink is called Sumi, and I think that you guys will easily find this on Amazon. So it's Sumi, S-U-M-I.
그리고 붓은 제가 많이 가지고 있는데 여기 이렇게.
So I have all these brushes that I use.
보통 동양화 붓을 그 아시아권에서는 쉽게 살 수 있거든요, 화방에서.
For all the brushes, it's easy to find it in South Korea.
뭐 가격도 되게 저렴해요. 제가 보통 붓은 그냥 싼 거를 사요. 왜냐하면은 붓은 어차피 소모품이거든요.
Generally, there are lots and lots of types of brushes, and since these brushes are consumables, I don't really put much budget onto it.
그래서 막 이런 거는 얼마 정도 할까? 한 5,000원도 안 하거든요.
So this kind of brushes would be 5,000 won, equivalent to $4. And this one too, it's not that expensive. I think it got more expensive at I paid few dollars more for this brush.
이건 화홍이라고 국산 브랜드고.
So this brush is from Korea, and the brand's name is Hwahong.
그리고 이거는 현진 쌤이 쓰던 걸 훔쳤는데.
This is a brush. This is a brush that I.
쓰고 있는데요. 지금 10만 넘는데.
이거는 비싸다고 방금 처음 알았습니다.
아껴 쓰고 있는데.
This is a brush that I stole from my professor, and I just learned that it's about $80.
뭐 수채화붓으로 유명한 것입니다.
This is a brush that is known for a watercolor brush.
사실 저는 이 화홍이랑 차이를 못 느끼고 있습니다.
But for me personally, I don't.
자, 제 붓 주인입니다.
So this is the real owner of this brush.
죄송합니다.
I am sorry.
지금 돌려드리고. 여튼 그러니까 제가 하고 싶은 말은 붓은 자기가 관리를 잘하는 게 중요하지 브랜드나 뭐 이런 거는 저는 크게 차이를 못 느꼈어요.
For me, I think personally, which is the most important thing is that you take care of your brushes. But for me, the price of the brushes doesn't really matter.
하지만 방금 뒤에서 김정기 작가님이 자기는 의미가 있는 것 같다고 말씀하셨어요.
But Jeonggi said that for him, Jeonggi, who is just drawing right behind Miss Jisu, he said that the price of the
네.
brush matters. He said that people who are poor normally says that the price doesn't really decide the quality of the brushes.
붓을 쓰고 난 다음에 제가 아까 관리를 얘기했는데
So I talked about taking care of your brushes.
쓰고 난 다음에 이렇게
You
이따가
use it.
쓰고 난 다음에 귀찮아서 던지고 집에 가면 안 돼요.
You shouldn't just go home placing down your brushes because you are too tired to take care of it.
물로 깨끗하게 잘 씻고
You have to wash it profoundly with water,
이렇게 볼을 만져주고
and you have to stroke the tip of the brush,
자, 그 다음에 이렇게 말려놓고 가야 돼요.
and then you have to put the brush somewhere so the brush could dry easily.
아까 전에 설명했던 이 먹이랑 붓으로 어떻게 제가 그림을 그리는지 보여드릴게요.
So now I'll demonstrate how I draw actually using these brushes and the ink.
일단 요거를 꼴꼴꼴 따릅니다.
So I will place the ink onto the palette that I use.
이 팔레트는 이 팔레트는 이것도 현진 쌤이 줬는데
This palette is also from my professor, Hyunjin.
감사합니다.
Thank you.
땡큐. 이거 어디서 샀습니까? 유럽입니까?
미국에서
미국?
And Hyunjin says that he bought this metallic palette from the States, but he doesn't recall the brand.
필요한 거는 또 하나에 필요한 거는 물통.
And now I have prepared the brushes and the ink, and the other thing that I need is water.
이런 거 써도 돼요, 그냥 뭐.
You can also use a plastic cup to put the
그건
water in.
상관없어.
It doesn't really matter.
저는 맥주 컵을 쓰고 있습니다.
I'm using this
비어,
cup to drink beer.
물을 여기 더하고요.
And I will add the water on the palette.
제가 말을 많이 해서 지금 보인 씨를 괴롭게 하고 있습니다.
I'm talking too much right now. Thus I'm torturing Buin at the same time.
자, 물을. 저는 그 연필 스케치를 안 하니까 연필 언더 스케치 대신에 이렇게 물을 많이 타가지고 연한 색으로 가볍게.
So since I don't do any pencil sketches before I actually start to draw, what I do instead of pencil sketching is that I mix a lot of amount of water with ink, and I will
여기다가 할게요. 가볍게.
settle my drawing's location onto the paper.
좀 잘 섞어주는 게 좋아요. 왜냐하면은
And you have to take time to mix the ink and the water. It is better to take your time to mix it,
이게 제대로 안 섞으면은 이게
because if you don't mix it well
이렇게
enough,
균일하게 나오지 않고 조금 이렇게 물과 잉크가 좀 분리된다고 해야 되나? 칠할 때.
so if you don't mix it with time, when you actually paint it on the paper, the water and the ink would divide themselves. So I have just demonstrated how I prepare myself before actually drawing, and now I'll pause a little bit and I'll show you my sketchbook. My recent sketchbooks, I brought them here.
예를 들면은 얘는
For example, this piece of drawing that I did.
이거는 그 제가 사실 처음 들어본 게임이었는데 뭐 커미션 요청이 와서 이렇게
It's for a commission. Jisu wondered what kind of pose that she would draw, so she did the brief sketches on the sketchbook.
뭐그 옷주름 공부한 거예요.
So these are the sketches that I did to study the folds of drapery.
이것도 그 옷에 대해서 제가 온라인으로 강의를 할 때
And this is also the sketches that I did while streaming to teach how to draw clothes.
했던 것들이고 브리프 스케치들은 보통 이런 식으로 이렇게 가볍게
So all the sketches that I do are like this.
사진 같은 거를 이렇게 많이 저장을 해놓고 보면서 이런 느낌 좋다라고 생각할 때 이렇게 그 사진에서 어떤 요소를 가져오기도 하고 아니면은 그냥 사진을 본 상태로 그냥 저는 눈을 돌리고 딴 거를 보면서 그냥 이렇게 그리는 거죠.
So I save a lot of photo references into my computer, and I would look at them. And sometimes, if there's some elements that I find it interesting, I try to use that onto my drawings. Or if I like a specific photo, I would look at it and then turn myself away and then draw.
그래서 이런 식으로 그리다가 이 브리프 스케치가 마음에 든다 하면은
So I keep on drawing until I find something that I like.
그러면은 그리는 거예요. 아마 이 그림을 보셨던 분도 있을 거예요.
Then I draw it with the InkWash technique during giving lessons.
이런 거는 그냥 막 써.
These are just the scribbles that I do.
아까 봤던 티파.
So this is a character which is called Tifa. You just saw the drawing.
이것도 커미션 때문에 어떤 포즈가 좋을지 여러 가지로 이렇게 그려놓은 거예요.
And these are also the sketches that I did to find the perfect pose that I would choose for the commissioned piece. So I'll show you some other sketches that I did.
이것도 그 원피스 캐릭터들 그린 건데 전시 때문에.
So this sketch was done for a exhibition concerning One Piece. So these are the characters in that comic book, in that manga. And these are the sketches that I did to study Western images, Western feelings.
이거 보면은 사진 보고 한 게 티가 나잖아요.
You can see that I have used the photo references with these kind of drawings.
제 생각에는 이렇게 자기 그림으로 옮길 때도 얼굴 같은 거는 창작으로 해도 괜찮은데 옷 같은 거는 조금 사진 이용을 많이 해야 된다고 생각해요.
She thinks that it is okay to draw your own characters with your own style when you draw faces, but she thinks that it is important to use references photos when you're drawing clothes. So it's also okay to use reference images when you draw, actually, but it would be better if you have already saved a lot of references images before. So those were the studies, and now we are back to the sketches that I did for commissioned pieces.
이것도 커미션이었어요.
So this was also for the commissioned piece.
근데 이거는 그림이 야해가지고 유튜브에 못 올렸어요.
But this piece I didn't post it on YouTube because it was for adults.
저 유튜브 시작한 지 얼마 안 됐는데 노란 딱지를 벌써 받을 순 없잖아요.
I started YouTube not that long ago. I cannot bear the idea of receiving the yellow badge already.
이거는 아까 말한 것처럼 사진 보고 공부한 것들.
So these are all the studies that I've done using reference images.
그림 어떻게 시작을 해야 되냐 뭐 이런 질문 정말 수도 없이 많이 받는데 저뿐이 아니라 많은 작가들이 많이 받겠지만
I am sure that it's the same for other artists too, but there are lots and lots of people who ask how to start drawing.
일단은 시작은 저는 뭐 김정희 선생님이 다르게 말씀하셨지만 저는 사진인 것 같아요.
She thinks that it is important to use a lot of photo references.
저 같은 범인은
Because I am not a genius.
그렇다고 해서 뭐 사진을 그대로 뺏겨서 그려서 자기 것처럼 하라는 얘기는 아니고요.
But it doesn't mean to use photos to copy it exactly and pretend that it's your drawing.
평소에 공부를 해두라는 뜻이죠.
It means that you have to study on your usual day.
저는 인체 공부를 그 현진 쌤한테 배웠는데
I studied anatomy
지금
from Hyunjin, who is
힙댄스를 추고
dancing
계시는
with his hips.
배우고 난 다음에 굉장히 인체 그리는 게 재밌어져가지고 이렇게 공부를 가끔씩 합니다.
So after I have been taught by him, I started to find anatomy really interesting. So I do my own studies from time to
현진 쌤이
time.
유튜브로 그 강의를 해주셨으면 좋겠어요. 다른 분한테도.
I would love to see Hyunjin giving lectures on YouTube to others too.
카존에서 강의를 볼 수 있긴 해요.
You can also see his lectures through a site called Kazon,
카존 온라인에서 볼 수
on
있습니다.
Kazon online.
뭐 먹을지 정했네요. 그 작업하면서 피자 시킬 때 무슨 피자를 시킬까 뭐 이렇게.
These are the scribbles that I did to decide what kind of pizza that I would get.
제 공부하고.
So an anatomical studies that I did.
웨스턴 많이 그릴 때네요.
So I guess that this is the moment when I drew a lot of Western elements.
근데 보면은 이렇게 차이가 느껴지는 게
But as you can see, we can see the difference.
이런 제 창작이에요. 레퍼런스 없이 그냥.
You see, these drawings are done without any references.
하지만 레퍼런스가 있는 그림은 딱 보면은
But when
답이
네.
답이 정해져 있는 걸 보고 그린 티가 나죠.
But this one is done with a reference photo, and you can, as you can see, you see that I haven't been creative. There's already an answer when I draw.
이제 슬슬 지겨워지네요. 이렇게 보는 게.
So I guess that we're getting tired of looking at my sketches.
이거는 캐릭터 만들 때, 캐릭터 빌드할 때.
So this is the sketches that I did when I was character building. When I was building characters.
복장을 그냥 구글링 하는 거예요. 그래서 조금 이 복장 마음에 들다 하면은 제가 하고 싶은 방식대로 이렇게 어레인지해서.
So what I did is that I googled a collection of images of clothings, and I would choose variety of elements, and I would arrange that to create a garment of my own. The next time when I would live stream again, we will take our time to go through my sketchbooks.
자, 오늘은 스케치북은 여기까지 보고.
Today this will be it, which is called Sumi, S-U-M-I, and you can find it easily on Amazon.
제가 한번 찾아봤는데 있더라고요.
I also looked up for it, and you can find it on Amazon.
제가 쓰는 종이는 일단은 요거랑 요건데.
So the papers that I use are these two.
둘 다 파브리아노예요.
Both are from Fabriano.
이게 한국에서 살 때는 한 15,000원, 2만 원 정도 했던 것 같아요.
The violet one, the one she's holding right now, it's around $12 to $16 in South Korea.
A3 사이즈도 쓰는데 A3 사이즈는 한 4만 원 정도 했던 것 같아요.
I also use the size of A3. A3 costs around $32.
너무 비싸죠.
It's too expensive. The reason why I use this paper, when you use a normal watercolor paper, they are really thick and they have a strong water resistance, but they have a rough texture.
하지만 요거는
But this one,
워터컬러라고 적혀 있지만
it is also a watercolor
라고 적혀 있지만
paper,
하지만 아주 텍스처가 없고 매끈합니다.
but it's really it doesn't really have a texture. It's really smooth. It even has a glossy like texture. So it's a hot pressed Fabriano watercolor paper. This one.
그리고
And this one,
요것도 굉장히 종이가 매끄럽습니다.
this is also very glossy. The paper is really glossy.
저는 이게 더 매끄러운 것 같아요.
I find this one more glossier than the violet one.
요거는 최근에 그 본인의 와이프를 그려달라는 커미션이 있어서 마카로 그렸습니다.
This is a commission piece from a guy who wanted her to draw his wife. So this one's done with markers.
제가 고백하자면 이것도 전기쌤 마카로 그렸습니다.
If I must confess,
지수가 전기세 마카로 그렸는데 가져가라.
if I must confess, the markers that I used to paint this drawing is also the markers that I stole from Junggi.
죄송합니다.
I am sorry.
자리를 비우지 말았어야지.
You shouldn't have left your place. It's okay. I'll sneak into your bed when you go to sleep. So now, on this paper, so these are the brief sketches that I did yesterday to choose what drawing that I would do.
뭐 요거를
Today,
그릴까? 요거를 그릴까?
This one, this one, this one.
일단은 요거를 한번 그려보겠습니다.
But today I decided that I would draw this one, the girl on the top left side of the paper.
이게 그 먹이 가지고 있는 장점이자 단점인데 너무 건조가 빨라요.
So it's because of this character of the ink, which is a advantage and a disadvantage at the same time.
제가 느끼기에는
The characteristic where it dries really fast.
제가 느끼기에는 그 서구권에서 쓰는 잉크?
어디요?
서구권에서 쓰는 잉크? 그냥
서구권.
일반
네네네.
잉크보다 더 빠르다고 저는 느꼈는데.
Personally, she thinks that it dries up much more quicker than the ink that the Westerners use.
그래서 이제 바로 들어갈 건데 잘 섞어서.
So I will start drawing directly.
옆에 여분의 종이가 있는 게 좋아요. 이렇게 해서 방금 제가 한 것처럼 이렇게 농도를 잘 봐야 돼요.
First, I will mix the ink, and it is important to have a small piece of paper right beside you because you have to check on the concentration of the ink.
그래서 디테일을 잡으려고 하지 말고 이렇게 크기 같은 거를 정한다고 보시면 될 것 같아요.
So you have to think that you shouldn't really think about the details for the moment. You have to briefly decide what kind of size your drawing would be.
라고 말해놓고 디테일을 들어가고 있네요.
I just went on drawing details right after I told you guys not to think about the details right away. But for me, it is easier to think of the details and the size, the brief size of the drawings at the same time.
이렇게 연하게 잡으면서
So I'll straightly color this part because it's going to be dark, because it doesn't get any light.
합니다.
Even my drawing, even my lines are dislocated from the size that I previously decided. When I started drawing, you don't think too much about it, you just leave it for the moment.
맞습니다. 그렇게. 그리고 그림 망하면 다시 그리면 돼요. 너무 신경 쓰지 마세요.
And even if you mess it up, you can always start over. So don't be
종이가-
afraid of messing it up.
종이가 얼마나 많습니까? 신경
There
쓰지
are-
마세요.
There are lots and lots of papers.
자, 대칭되게 그리면 되겠죠? 손이.
So the other hand, you can just make it symmetry to the left hand on the drawing.
천천히 그리려고 그랬는데 생각보다 빨리 그리게 되네요.
I was going to.
Draw slowly, but
I'm going really quick,
자, 이렇게
like this.
스케치를 해두고
So I did my sketch of the drawing with the ink.
자, 그러면은 이제 조금 이제 잉크를 더 많이 섞어가지고 진하게 해야겠죠?
So now I will mix more ink into the water,
그리고
and I'll make it more dense.
한 방울 찍고
One drop,
여기다가 싹싹
and mix it.
이렇게 해서 물을 조금만 더 하고
And you add a little bit of water.
옆에다가
So in my head, I've decided that this girl has a dark hair, not blonde hair. So I'm going to go dense.
머리카락을 잘 그리려면은
How to draw
이제
the
이렇게
hairs really well.
빛에 대한 이해가 좀 필요한 것 같아요.
If you want to draw hairs well, you have to have a understanding in lights.
그런 설명들은 저보다 더 많은 좋은 선생님들이 해놓으셨을 테니
So please don't hesitate to find other professors who are more professional on explaining how the light works.
참고 바랍니다.
So please take that into charge.
그렇긴 한데 근데 저도 개인적으로 온라인 클래스를 할 거거든요.
But still, I'm going to give online lectures too in future.
보인 씨는 모르겠지만 보인 씨랑 같이 할 거거든요.
The translator doesn't know, but it will be done with the translator.
네.
충격적이다.
네. 보인 씨 돈 벌고.
I didn't know that I was going to work on that.
현진 쌤도 촬영 같이 하고.
And 현진 쌤 하셨나요?
현진 쌤도 촬영 같이 하셔야 되고.
And 현진 has to film it.
정기 쌤이 가끔씩 혼내주시고.
And Jonggi will be there to scold on her. But Miss Jisu isn't being hurt by his words
왜냐면은
because
익숙하거든요.
she is used to it.
잭슨 나쁜 놈 만들었는데.
맨날 이럽니다, 여러분.
Jonggi said that he likes this image of being the bad guy
배드했습니다.
because he always wanted to be a villain.
아까보다 조금 더 진하게 해서
So as you can see, I'm using more darker lines.
조금씩 형태를 찾아가는 거죠.
So with these darker lines, we're picking up the form of the drawings. So it's basically stacking up the ink step by step. But the thing which is complicated when using InkWash technique is that when you apply the ink, the mixture of the water and the ink on the paper, it gets lighter when the ink dries up. It gets lighter than you have expected the color to be inside your head. So you have to calculate all that.
그렇죠?
Right?
쌤?
네.
Hyunjin? And he said yes.
왜 그러냐면 종이와 그 바이러 사이에서 이제 물이 날아가고 이러면서 종이에 더 밀착되잖아요. 물이 날아가.
And why does the painting gets lighter when the ink is dried up? Hyunjin said that when the water evaporates from the mixture of the water and the ink would attach itself more onto the paper. So with our eyes, we will see more white of the paper on the drawing. That's why it gets lighter. Actually, I learned this information from Hyunjin 10 years ago.
여러분도 좋은 정보를 알게 됐죠.
And now you guys all know this high level information. There would be less ink on the paper so that we would see much more white from the paper, so the drawing would be lighter. But if you press not that hard on the paper, there will be a great amount of ink applied onto the paper so that our eyes would see less white of the paper, so the drawings wouldn't really seem lighter.
그 현진 쌤이 방금 얘기한 걸 이용해서 질감 표현을 할 수가 있는 거예요.
And that's the reason why we can describe the textures on the drawings by using the technique that Hyunjin just told us.
좀 반짝이는 질감을 표현하려면은 붓을 빠르게 쓰고.
So if you want to give a glossy kind of feeling to the drawing, you have to go really fast with your brush.
뭐 반대 질감을 하려면은 붓을 천천히. 개념을 몰라도 이렇게 본능적으로 하고 있으실 거예요. 뭐 수채화를 하시는 분들은.
But at the same time, if you are watercolor painters or if you work on watercolors, if you don't really have this information on your head literally, you would already know naturally. As you can see on the right side of the painting, she put her sketchbook and she is testing out the density of the ink.
이제 내가 좋아하는 파트인데
This is the part that she likes. So she has a bang for hair.
뱅의 그림자를 그리는 걸 굉장히 좋아합니다.
she really enjoys describing the shadows of that forehair
딱 그리는 순간
because
뭔가
as
멋있지 않나요?
soon as you describe it, it gets much more stylish.
Yeah, beautiful.
저는 이게 굉장히 좋아요.
I really like this part,
그래서 뱅 그리는 걸 좋아해요.
and that's why I like to draw bangs on girls.
살짝.
And I'm going to paint a little bit on the lips. Like I said, if I press too hard my brushes on the paper, or if I go too slow, there will be more ink applied to the paper, so the color would get darker.
그래서 빠르게 촥.
So that's why I went really quick. For the moment, I finished the face. I'll try to add more things on the face, more shadows, for example. If I think the face is too bright compared to the other details of the drawings, but for the moment I think the face is fine, so I'm going to leave it there.
눕혀가지고 이렇게 눕혀가지고 이런 식으로 만들어서 좀 이런 다양한 스트로크를
If you tilt your brush and if you lay your brush close to the paper, the shape of the brush will change, and it will let you do the really thin strokes to do the details of the hair.
유니크랩이 나타났다. 이렇게 눕혀가지고 좀 이렇게 뭐라 그러지?
붓을 평평하게 만든다.
평평하게 만들어서 재밌는 텍스처를 좀 쓸 수도 있어요.
So if you tilt your brush closer to the paper, you'll have a flat brush. You'll be able to make it really flat, which will let you do these kind of strokes that you can apply when you draw hairs. I'll show you again. You apply the ink, you tilt your brush and describe all the small details regarding the eyelashes and eyebrows.
재밌죠?
It's really fun.
이렇게
Like this.
딱 정확한 선을 벗어나면 안 되는 부분에서는 숨을 좀 참고
You can just hold your breath while painting on the surface where you shouldn't mess up.
말하느라 숨을 못 참아서 망했습니다.
But I messed it up anyways because I couldn't hold my breath due to the talking. Because if it gets dry as soon as the ink dries up, the color hue will change. And and because of that, this would be the moment that I take my larger brush.
어떤 사이즈 붓을 써야 되냐는 질문도 많았는데 이거는 너무나 쉽게 답할 수밖에 없는 게 넓은 면적을 칠할 땐 큰 붓을 쓰고 작은 면적을 칠할 땐 작은 붓을 쓰면 되는 거죠.
And there were people who asked me what size of the brushes that they should use, but it's really simple. When you're painting a large surface, you use a bigger brush. When you're painting a small surface, you use a smaller brush.
여기 있던 거 다 뺏어갔어요.
You see, it just kind of took all of the water that she put on the palette.
그래서 여기 지금 칠해 보면은
So as you can see, if I paint it on the sketchbook, she has to use much more water and much more ink.
이렇게 주룩할 정도로 해줘야 될 것 같아요. 주르륵.
Because the space is quite large, she thinks that she has to take the water and the ink, where the amount of the ink and water might just drool down.
주르륵 하면 스릴이 있죠.
It's also
thrilled.
it's also very it's awfully thrilling.
근데 붓이 두꺼우니까 날카로운 묘사가 힘들어요.
But because the brush is quite big, it's difficult to describe a detailed things,
그럴 때는
detailed elements.
종이를 돌려가면서
You have to spin the paper according to the direction of the brush that you're
brush goes.
going. But for you guys, I won't spin the paper for today. Now I have to color the skin. The water got murky, so she's going to use a different cup, a new cup of water.
물칠을 할 거예요.
Now I'm going to apply
아무것도
water.
물만.
Nothing, no ink, but just water.
그리고 물만 칠하고 벌써 마르고 있습니다, 여러분.
It's already drying up the water.
진짜 너무너무 이럴 때는 물을 같이 하면서
In this case, you apply the water at the same time. You switch two brushes. You apply water and then you apply a little bit of ink.
왜 그런지 아시겠죠? 건조가 너무 빨라서 그래요.
Now you understand why. It's because it dries up so quickly.
저는 수채화로 그리는 게 원래 익숙하거든요.
I'm more used to painting in watercolor.
근데
But
수채화 할 때는 이런 고민은 없었는데 이거는 정말 극악하게 건조가 빨랐어요. 넓은 면을 칠할 때.
so she thinks that when you're using InkWash, when you're painting a larger surface, it dries up so quickly than the watercolor. Now, firstly you apply water and then you put ink and then water.
섞어서 약간 섞이도록.
Use both so that it can be mixed.
아주
More thinner brush that I used before.
아주 연한 색을 가지고 와서
And I will apply this light, very, very light color.
잉크야.
We have switched our cameraman. Now it's Unique Lab who is filming.
잉크랩 작가님 촬영을 해주시다.
With this brush, you can describe the surface and also the small details of the drawings.
손 같은 경우에는 너무 그리기 힘들잖아요, 상상으로.
So now we're bringing the fingers more alive, and you see, as you can see, for all of us, it is really difficult to draw fingers. What we can do is that we look at our own hand.
그래서 여기 접히는 부분이 여기잖아요.
You see, this is the part where it folds.
여기가 아니라
It's not the upper part, but it's
이렇게
down
접히니까
there.
한 부분 접히고 하나, 둘, 세 개, 네 개 이렇게 접히잖아요.
So there are 4 parts that are being folded, and you think of the folding parts of the hand and you draw that. Drawing is always difficult. It's something that is difficult all the time, but when you draw something without any references, there are so many things that you have to know by heart, which makes the drawing much more difficult.
이렇게
This was what she was going to do for the background.
아까 한 것처럼 물 많이 써서
Like she did just before, she put a lot of water,
이렇게
like that.
거친 텍스처를
You make a rough texture onto that background painting. It's also important to make it darker, the borders of the borders in between the background and the drawing itself. When the part of the drawing is brighter, you have to make the background darker. And when the color of the painting is lighter, the background which meets that part of the drawing should get a little bit lighter. When you feel that
아니 이거 일부러 한 거예요.
그렇군요.
네.
When you
걱정하지
feel
마십시오.
that the ink is drying up so quickly, you apply the ink. You make it more darker.
그렇게 하면은 또 이게 그 소금 뿌려서 수채화하는 방법이 있거든요. 그것처럼 이렇게 번지는 느낌도 들어요.
If you do that, you will have this natural effect. There is a technique in watercolor where you put salts onto the mixture of the color paints and the water to give this kind of texture, spreaded texture.
선생님 얘기가 더 쉬운 것 같아요.
난 단어 몇 개 사용 안 해.
지수가 훨씬 어렵지 사실.
그랬군요.
수업을 하는
약간 좀 더 테크닉이
네.
이렇게 딱. 다들 엄청 좋아하네요. 소금 테크닉 아니요, 소금 테크닉 몰랐다고. 신기하네. 그리고 아까 누구는 이제 검은 잉크가 피부로 이제 피부 가까이 막 흘러내려가지고 오줌 쌀 뻔했다.
팬티 갈아입고 오세요.
It's really fun to apply the dark ink when you have applied the water onto the paper because it spreads really naturally.
재밌죠? 큰일 난 거 맞죠? 큰일 난 거 아니에요. 걱정 마세요.
It's like as if I messed up the drawing, but you're wrong. I didn't.
혼난다 이제.
분위기.
안 혼났다.
Now she has a small mole on her face because I splashed a small amount of ink onto her face. This is also a happy little accident. So I am applying darker colors onto the clothes.
근데 지금 굉장히 진한 것 같이 보이지만 이게 또 마르면은
As you can see on the screen, it looks really black, but you have to keep it in mind that when the ink dries up, the color will get lighter.
제가 이거에 속은 게 한두 번이 아니라서
She's telling you guys this repeatedly because she was fooled by this effect a lot of times too.
그죠? 점점 이렇게
You see, it's getting lighter already. The black ink is evaporating.
마르고 있습니다.
It's drying up. In your drawing book, you have some digital art. Do you approach it with the same style of InkWash like technique, or do you find it does not translate clearly into digital? She said that she does the same for everything.
만약에 제가 작업하는 공간이 따로 없으면은 아마 CG를 좀 더 많이 했을 것 같긴 해요.
She thinks that she would have drawn more things digitally if she didn't have a
Space.
studio of her own. Because for most of the people, it is difficult for us to have a space on our own where we could have all the materials ready.
돈이 문제가 아니라 약간 좀 마음이 좀 안 잡힌다고 해야 되나 좀 그렇잖아요. 집에서 안 하게 되고.
She's not really talking about the cost of having all these materials, but it's about the difficulty of having the mindset to start and concentrate on painting if you just like don't have your own studio where you can draw with concentration.
뭐 이제 조만간 방송을 끝낼 것 같은데요.
So we're going to wrap up in a minute, in a short while. So I mainly talked about all the materials that I used today for the InkWash drawings. So the brush.
작은 붓에 대해서 많이 질문했었는데 이거는 저도 어디 건지 잘 모르겠어요.
There were a lot of people who were asking about the small brushes, but the green one, sadly, she doesn't know where she got it.
홍대에서 샀고요.
In an area called Hongdae
in Seoul.
in Seoul.
가에현
It's called Ga-e-hyun.
이랑 하나는 서울
And the other one is called Seoul.
매듬
made them. You can easily find oriental painting brushes at your nearby art supply store.
저는 사이즈 한 요 4개 정도만 가지고 있으면은 충분한 것 같아요.
She thinks it's sufficient to have these brushes in these 4 sizes. The smallest one, the fattest one, the less fat one. And the ink she uses is the Sumi ink from Japan.
브랜드는 모르겠고요.
She doesn't really know what the brand is.
그리고 요거 팔레트.
And the palette that she used today.
컵 써도 돼요. 그냥 뭐 그
You can also use cup
컵 아니면 뭐 접시.
or a plate.
물통은 아무거나 그냥 뭐 이런 거 쓰면
And for
되고.
water, you can just use any kind of
가격의
cup.
문제가 아니라 이렇게 딱 잡아놓고 이렇게 마음을 하는 거 아까 전에 얘기했던 거 그게 마인드셋이 문제니까.
Like she said, she thinks that the materials, what kind of brushes you use, isn't really that important. The most important thing would be your mindset to concentrate on drawing. So how do you manage to keep your brush thin and so your line quality precise, even if you sometimes use the same brush both for lines and bigger surfaces?
좋아요.
Yes.
아주 가는 면을 하려면 방금 한 것처럼 이렇게 해서 약간 붓을 뾰족하게 만들어요.
If you want to paint on a smaller surface, you press hard your brush and you make the brush flat. You see, there's always a brush with pointed end.
그러면은 이거 이렇게 칠하기가 너무 힘들어요, 사실.
But with this pointed brush, it's really hard to paint with this
이렇게 떨리거든요.
because it gets like it gets
Shaky.
all shaky.
So, 그러니까 이렇게
So you press
뾰족하게
hard
만들고
your brush to flatten it,
저는 이렇게 뾰족하게 쓰거나
and that's how she draws line with the same brush.
좀 그렇게 표현하는 편이에요.
So that's how she draws eyebrows,
그리고
eyelashes,
이렇게 또 모아가지고
lines.
이렇게
And then you will assemble the brush, and then like that you will be able to paint on the surface.
뾰족하게 만듭니다. 어떻게든. 그러면은
You can easily practice with a brush pen too, because it works the same way. If it's a bit of a burden to start painting with InkWash, you can easily use brush pen. So it's the same
똑같아요.
thing with the brush pen.
똑같은데
You see,
들어 이게 더 뾰족한 거 더 쓰기 좋을 수도 있어요. See that?
if you brush it gently on the paper, you will be able to gather
easily.
gather the points really easily, so that you can draw within lines.
근데 왜 이걸 안 쓰냐? 이렇게 쉬운데라고 생각할 수 있겠죠.
There might be some people who ask why she doesn't use the brush pen since it's so easy to use.
왜냐면은 여기다가 이제 물을 이렇게 하면은
It's because it's not
건조해요.
water resistant.
저 이렇게 명암을 손으로 하는 게 너무 힘들어서 물로 하기 위해서 잉크워시로 갈아탔어요.
To make the shades with your finger, but since it was too hard for her, she started using InkWash because she could easily describe the shades by using water, by mixing water and the ink.
도희 씨 너무 수고하셨습니다.
아닙니다. 이렇게
감사합니다. 이제 방송을 종료할 거고요. 좋은 대답이 됐으면 좋겠고.
So this is the end. Thank you for watching. She hopes that this answered your questions about how she draws.
다음에 어떤 거 했으면 좋을지 뭐 댓글 같은 거나 뭐 이렇게 달아주시면은 참고하겠습니다.
Please leave on the comments what would you like to learn or see the next time, so she could take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you for watching.
Thank you for
today.
watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
보여주시는 거니까
요거 이렇게요?
저기
요거.